Next is assessments. Evaluate if your employees have the qualities to promote and gauge your employees' willingness to learn. This can be used as an insight to employees that may have potential for leadership positions for internal promotions. Now next is cross-training. This can be used to strengthen employee skills in areas that they may not be very strong in. So if they're lacking in something, you can cross-train and engage those to strengthen those skills. Now the last is training events. I say training events, not training seminars, because they just aren't as effective anymore. You want to get employees interacting, and they're more likely to learn. There was a recent study done with changing workforce training during a pandemic. It states that employees respond better primarily to problem solving firsthand or working with their peers. So actually interacting and doing the work. Now, 20% they respond to discussing the coursework with their peers. Actually, brainstorming with their coworkers to basically figure out how to do new things. And the last 10% being instructor-led training, actually watching somebody read something off of a screen. Now next, we're going to go over ADA and EEOC laws and regulations. ADA is the Americans with Disability Acts, and EEOC is Equal Employment Opportunity Coalition. So their main mission is to intercept the discrimination of employees in the workplace and to amend those who have previously been discriminated against. Their guidelines, along with those of the Education Commission, support Catherine and her team in doing a uniquely diverse campaign on the University of Wisconsin campus. Open communication is critical for employees to be open about discrimination. So we as, human resources team need to engage our employees, need to be present with them so they feel safe enough to come to us about these issues. Now, another way to avoid any discrimination is to make sure that we're putting these laws in place and closely monitoring the workplace so that way we know that no employees are being harassed or discriminated against on their religion or their color of their skin or their race or many factors of things. Now, there are several reasons that employees don't come forward, which are fear of retaliation, that there will not be anything done to resolve it, or they feel pressured into hiding the issues. But if we have a zero tolerance program in place, it's the best way to represent to employees that we will address something when it happens and that it's not going to be swept under the rug. And the best thing that we can do is just stay up to date on all of the laws. For example, you have to know that there's legal questions when interviewing candidates. You can't ask about anything that might allude to if they don't get the position, it was because of discrimination for those reasons. So you can't ask for age, race, religion, marital status, disabilities, or arrest records. And by avoiding those, it evades the speculation that that's why they were not hired. A lot of times people do skills-based assessments at the beginning of an interview or at the end of an interview just to gauge if the employee has those certain skills. And a lot of people outsource those from different companies. They have the companies do the assessments for them. It's just very important to make sure that you're reviewing those assessments so there is no bias. Now, the next thing we're going to discuss is job descriptions. I have two examples here for you. We're not going to go into too much detail of the actual job descriptions because what is more important is what's listed in the job descriptions. So some of the things that are important are who you're going to be or who the candidate would be reporting to, who the company is with. You want these candidates to be able to do their research and be able to effectively tell you why they want to work for your company. Location is important. Job type, are they exempt, non-exempt employees, full-time, part-time, schedule, what that's going to be like, what their salary is going to be like. In order to stray away from discrimination, what we want to list in there is any physical requirements that they may have. So if you have to be able to sit for very long periods of time or be able to stand, by clarifying this, it just removes any bias for discrimination over somebody that can't do those things. You really need to be very transparent when you're doing these, just because if you want candidates to apply for the job, you need to be very specific in what you're putting out there. So the job summary would be next. Basically, the tasks that you need that person to do, and most importantly, skills and experience required. A lot of times, for my examples, I listed human resources. Interpersonal and communication skills are something that are desperately needed for human resources. If you can't relate to people, if you're not good with people, you obviously probably don't need to be in that field. Same with experience, is there a certain school that needs to correlate with that? One of the most important things that I did discuss with Catherine, because a lot of the times in her position, she makes the job descriptions, but she may not necessarily have any experience with that job description. So what's important there is the ability to discuss with your hiring managers what it is that you're looking for. Again, communication is key because you need to avoid any posting areas by consulting with those managers and performing a job analysis to organize basically a foundation for your ideal candidate. Now next is my training curriculum. So I separated this into basically 4 categories for my training curriculum: day 0, day 1, week 1, and week 2. Now day 0, all of this happens before you actually hire the employee. You need to establish how you want to train employees, who will be your trainers, how you want to engage employees, and goals that you want to accomplish. Basically, it's like the foundation of how you would like to set up training. You need to have specific goals in order to train employees the way that you want them to. Next would be day 1. A lot of the times day 1 is just doing that new hire paperwork, providing employees with employee handbooks, but I think it's important to take it one step above and beyond. Tour the workspace so they can associate learning with specific places, and they can meet your team. That's definitely important. They're going to be spending 40 hours or more with these people, so you need to effectively get them in the door. Now week 1, the first part of the day would be consisted of reading the training manual. The second half would be following a trainer. You need to have a trainer that is trained to adjust, recognize how an employee learns and adjust the training to their needs. So if they're more likely to learn by reading, give them a little bit more reading time. You need to be able to ask questions and evaluate what has been learned at the end of each training day, just so you can assess that they are actually learning the knowledge. Week 2, the new hires will lead the workday. So basically they're going to be the one in charge, but you'll have a trainer at a close distance. So if something were to come up, the new hire feels that they have the support if something does go wrong. Now, the end of week 2 would be an assessment for a formal end of training. You need to make sure before you throw somebody in the water that they know all of the information and they're confident on doing it all on their own. But it's also to evaluate your success of the training process. So you'll use that to gauge what's working in my training curriculum and what's not. So it's definitely something that's important to remember. Now the next thing we're going to go over is tips on how to enter the human resource industry. Now, one of the things that Catherine mentioned, just because she did not start out in the human resources industry, is to be open to all opportunities. Now, it's not always going to be packaged perfectly at the job that you want, so just be open to meeting new people and taking the opportunities that come and are presented to you. It's definitely important to grow your network. A couple ways that you can grow your network are to intern and volunteer, or apply at temp and staffing agencies. A lot of the time it's short contract work, but those can turn into full-time positions. So it's definitely something that would be worth your time. So even if you don't get a full-time position, you at least now have that experience under your belt. Last, we're going to go over the challenges of the human resource industry. Now, this pandemic, as I mentioned before, has completely shaken up the industry in the sense that while changes in information have been something that are constant in human resources, the coronavirus has made it to where the constant updates are on a daily basis. There's stuff that's coming out every day that they have to keep up with and put out to their customers or their employees. Like the changes around leave. That information was coming out on a daily basis, but they had to figure out how to interpret the information and get it out to their employees. Another challenge in human resources is the stigma. The stigma is that if you've done something wrong, that's the only time that you're going to see human resources. But that's something that definitely needs to be overcome. A lot of people don't talk to human resources because it is associated with that basically kind of being in trouble. And a lot of that is attributed to the absenteeism of the human resources team. She had mentioned, Catherine had mentioned that a lot of people don't see human resources until, they're going to be terminated or it's disciplinary action. But we need to be present, make it known. You need to know your employees, whether they're doing something wrong or they're doing something right, so you can gauge their success and build a more positive work environment. You need to have that open communication with your people. And having that open communication makes employees who are not comfortable speaking up feel that you're more relatable and that they can speak to you about things. And how do your employees know you're available? You have to be there. You have to make it known every step of the way who the human resources person is. A lot of times in the industry, people will have harassment or discrimination and they don't even know the person who their HR team is. So it's very hard to expect our employees to open up if they're not comfortable with us. Otherwise, they feel like they may just be retaliated against, or they just won't be heard. One of the best things I think that I took from my interview with Catherine is that during these times, she has put her and her partner's email address to the entire company. So that way, if something's going wrong or if they don't have the answers, at least her people feel they have a name to put through these times, and that they'll always know that she's there, basically. So in conclusion, human resources is very important. They wear very many hats, and they do really so much in a business. HR is in it for the people, and I always say that good human resources management is the passion for helping people, because you're in the business of helping people. A good human resources team sets a foundation for your whole company. They create a positive work environment, train and promote development for employees. They put procedures and policies in place to keep your employees safe, and they research the best compensation and benefits for employees. They protect employees from discrimination and harassment, and they just genuinely want to help their people. Their main job is to support and advocate for their employees. So that is the end of my presentation. I hope that you have learned a lot. And if there are any additional questions about human resources, please message me. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time.